Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of the video series. This will be a shootout between the Kahler and Floyd Rose guitars. So I've been playing Floyd Rose guitars since 2018 and I like them. I do. I don't hate them. Every guitar I have to have is gotta have a floating bridge of some sorts. But I prefer the Kahler. Now this comes to a shock because a lot of people prefer these. A lot of people sit there and dog on the Kahler all day. Why is the Kahler better? Well, it's not better and it's not worse. I think each bridge has their pros and cons. So this is like a little bonus video on my thoughts. So what's nice about Floyd is you get subtle vibrato out of it. Now, but as a tech, what do I prefer working on? Not these. No. I don't mind them. I can work on them just fine. I can get them to stay in tune, no problem. But I'd like to see a lot more people gravitate towards these. These are more overall user-friendly. Why, you might be asking, especially for a tech. You don't have to do this all the time. You know, flipping it over. And it's a little more player-friendly. Now, I'll explain why. This is a big thing when you're using harmonics and pulling up on the bar. With a Floyd Rose and how it moves, this is the Floyd. The whole bridge moves. So when you go to pull up on, especially if you have low action, I played on high action for years for this reason. When you pull up, the strings will end up hitting the frets and dying out. I've had that happen with low action. But with a Kahler, that doesn't happen because of how the bridge operates. So you have two separate parts here, as I like to refer to them as the cam and the saddles. The saddles don't move like on a Floyd Rose. On a Floyd Rose, they do move. So when you pull up, the strings may hit the frets, especially if you're fretting something. And with the Kahler, when you pull up, it's just the cam that moves here. See, just the cam moves. The saddles don't move. They stay stationary. So really, it's just increasing the tension. I mean, it does that on a Floyd Rose, but it does it in a completely different way. That's why I prefer a Kahler when playing, but when it comes to working on them, you don't have to be stuffing stuff in the, like on a Floyd. You don't have to be stuffing stuff back there or under the bridge. And not all Kahlers have this, but there's a set screw here. And you lock that in and it fixes the bridge. You can't move it. And that makes it easier to restring. Or if you want a hardtail, you can have that. So that's like the pros of the Kahler. The big con with the Kahler is the original Kahler nut. Now Kahlers don't, like, if you're looking at old Strats with a Kahler, you're probably not going to find one with a Floyd nut. This is where the Floyd wins. It has the better nut. Now, with the Kahler nut, it's really a string lock of sorts. It sits behind a regular nut and just locks the strings so they don't move up here. So they don't get loose, you know. Now, with the Kahler one, it relies heavily on how well that nut is. I said I would touch on this in this video. And the nut on a Kahler guitar should be really well cut, maintained, because if not, you're going to run into a lot of the tuning issues that people complain about with the Kahler. Now, that's not to say that, you know, both are perfect. By any means, nothing's perfect. But I do prefer the Kahler. This isn't a surprise to a lot of people that know me. I've been playing a Kahler for about a year and a half, maybe. As soon as I got it, it just felt perfect for me. I do like the Floyd Rose still. I could play either or. There's people out there that say they can't play both. And they say, oh, you have to have a different picking technique. Not really. Not for me, at least. I think Kevin Frizzard is a great example of that. I believe he said that to me one time. But I prefer the Kahler, but I still like the Floyd Rose. I'm not going to dog on a Floyd Rose because they're good too. It's just each has their pros and cons. And it's really whatever you may prefer. I recommend trying both. I really do. There's people out there that have tried both and don't like one or the other. That's fine. Or hate both. That's completely fine. I'm not here to judge anybody's preferences. We all have different ones. But I do prefer the Kahler. But I do prefer the Floyd Rose nut over a Kahler nut. Floyd Roses aren't bad. They're not hard to set up. Neither are Kahlers. There's a lot of people out there that seem to complicate the Kahler a lot, which it's almost the same concept, if you get what I'm saying. But with it, Kahler, there is a big drawback when it comes to buying parts. Now, with the Kahler, since they're not as prevalent as the Floyd Roses, the parts are a little more expensive as compared to a Floyd Rose, where you could get the parts for decent, like, not like breaking the bank, you know. And I forget how much the saddles for a, like one saddle for a Kahler is. I think it's like $20 or something. Don't quote me on that. Whereas a Floyd Rose, you buy the set. I'm not sure on the top of my head how much it is. But Floyds are more prevalent on guitars than Kahlers, sadly. I wish it was like, you had a nice mix. Usually if you're going to find a Kahler, it's probably going to be on a signature guitar of some sorts. I know Dean has them on their productions, although we won't get into that in the whole Dean situation. But like I prefer ESP guitars, but a lot of them have Floyd Roses or Tune-o-matics. I don't like Tune-o-matics. I do have a guitar with a Tune-o-matic. I learned to live with it. But yeah, and like when it comes to blocking these so they're fixed, it's easier on a Kahler. But I like the flat feel of a Floyd. I hear some people compare the Kahler's like feel to a Tune-o-matic. I kind of get it, but at the same time I disagree. I don't know how to explain it. It's really weird. But another nice thing about the Kahler is its options. Now, what do I mean by options? Well, we mentioned one already, and that would be the set screw. Locks the bridge. That's one nice option. You have the option between a hardtail, and Kahler does sell regular hardtails that look like they're trims. I don't see the point in them, honestly. It's kind of pointless, unless if you're just putting one on there. Like, I think Dave Mustaine used one for a long time. But when it comes to, like, options with a trem, you can't change the string spacing on this. On a Kahler, you can. So, what do I mean by this? So, the space in between the strings. Now, this is set up to basically mimic a Floyd Rose's string spacing. It's like, I'm not sure the exact measurements. I'd have to bust out all that. But, like on a Tune-o-matic, the string spacing is narrower. This is set wider like a Floyd Rose. And you can set these narrow if you want, whatever you're comfortable with. And I think that's a great option to have. Overall, I do prefer the Kahler from a tech's perspective and from a player's perspective, but there's nothing wrong with the Floyd Rose at all. They both work great. They're both great trims. Sometimes, like, it depends on the day. I'll prefer the Floyd. I'll prefer the Kahler. Overall, it's mainly this. I do like these, and it saddens me that these don't get a lot of love because they're great bridges. I think they're more well thought out than the Floyd. And it's nice because it's really self-contained. So it all comes down to preference at the end of the day. These are just my thoughts on what I think is better in my opinion. But it just comes down to the pros and cons of both. Both are great. Both have their pros. Both have their cons. For Kahler, it's their regular nuts. They're not good at all. I don't like them. I don't even like the look of them. Floyd Roses, they got the better nut. I pointed this out one time. Jeff Hanneman's Jackson, I believe it was his Jackson, yeah. It originally had a Kahler nut. It got swapped out for a Floyd Rose nut later on. I didn't notice that for the longest time, and I noticed it one day. I even shared it. Yeah, it just shows the Floyd Rose nuts are better. Like, you go look at really any signature guitar with a Kahler, it's bound to have a Floyd Rose nut, because those nuts are better for any sort of moving bridge. But, yeah, it's really what you prefer at the end of the day. I like both. I can play both. I can work on both just fine. They don't really cause me much of a headache like they used to. I learned how to maintain both of them. It's just when it comes down to having to, flip it over 50 times, I don't really have to do that much on these anymore either. It's really just adjusting and making sure everything's perfect. But it really just does come down to personal preference. I say, if you have the chance, try a Kahler because they're not too prevalent, like I said before. They're really good bridges. I think if a lot more people gave them a chance, I think you would see them more often. You see them a lot on like older Jacksons and mainly older Jacksons, come to think of it. So, yeah, Kahlers get a bad rap. And so do these. They all get a bad rap. There's people out there that just hate them to death. There's entire like Facebook groups dedicated. Oh, I hate this bridge. Oh, I hate that bridge. It doesn't really matter. Give them both a try. See what you prefer. Hey, if you like both, you like both. Hey, if you like one over the other, no problem. I really don't care what you prefer. That's up to you. Is this what I prefer? Well, I prefer the Kahler, but you get my point. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day what you prefer. It's just what works for you. What others use is what others use. So I'd say give them a try, both of them. Even if you're somebody who sticks to hardtails, give them a try. Floyds aren't bad. Kahlers aren't bad if you know how to work them and maintain them and keep them in tune. And I mentioned that in part 1, all the tips on how to keep these in tune. It's really not that difficult. Anybody could really do it. It's nothing special. So you guys have a good one. I'll see you around.